morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Mornings with Martha, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. Good morning, Bobby Carr. I see you here. Good morning to the rest of you. It is Tuesday. Whew, Lord. It is Tuesday, September 2nd. 2025. I cannot believe we're already here. Lord have mercy. I'm looking for something here to see if I can find it because I'm trying a new experiment and I'm trying to see if you guys can get to it. Good morning, Beatrice. Good morning, Marguerite. Lord, good morning. Good morning to each and every one of you. It's whew, Lord have mercy. We are here. Let me see what's going on. I'm trying to see if I'm in this live space. I don't see it yet. Maybe if I go over here, I'm sorry, y'all. I am in pain. Mova is in serious pain from walking 8 miles yesterday after going to the gym. So you know. I had to stop and do my hip flexors just to walk a few feet. Lord Jesus, it's a long story. How was your holiday? How was your Labor Day? I hope you all have done some amazing things. Good morning, Laura, Fee, Monica. David Alexander Jenkins should be joining me if he is awake at this point because I was talking to him at 1 o'clock this morning. It's Ruby's first day of school. Oh, Tammy, good morning. Good morning. Give Ruby a big hug from all of us and tell her happy school year and that we wish her the best of every single thing. Ruby is one of my youngest listeners. She is 7, 8. I believe Ruby is still 8. She may have turned 9 now. And here on Mornings with Mova, we support her. We take her, we go, she has something going on and her mother invites us. We go. Yeah, Marguerite. You know what? I tell you what. I could feel like I had lipstick on my teeth. I decided that I wanted to walk with my crew. We haven't walked in a while. Life, right? Everything's been going on. We've all gotten things happening, et cetera, et cetera. And so I reached out to them and I said, "Can we just do like a little walk for an hour, 90 minutes maybe?" Which I'm thinking would get us 2, maybe 3 miles, because we climb. And so when we got to the Indian statue, which was about 2 miles in, which means it would have been 4 miles, another 2 miles coming back. They were like, let's just keep walking. Oh my God. Oh my God. But the good news about that is we got to talk. We got to talk. When we take those walks and we're up there high up in the elevation, we get to talk to each other about the things that are on our minds, the things that concerns us, the things that makes us laugh. And if we thought we were going to walk 8 miles yesterday, then we would have done something differently. But we did it. And so now we're here. Monica, you're absolutely correct. There is so much going on. It's not an easy thing to do. And I was at an event on Sunday, the 31st at Dawafe, talking to entrepreneurs. There was a beautiful event hosted by Dawafe and Moibi and T, and we had entrepreneurs. The gentleman who owns Ubuntu Gallery up here in Germantown, a brand new sister who just started, entrepreneurship, and then there's Sarita Scott, who has been an entrepreneur for 30 years. And I really wanted to have a discussion with them about what is it like to be an entrepreneur, right? What are the decisions that you have to make? What does it look like? And I could see the faces of the folks in the audience when we began talking about the sacrifices that it requires. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It isn't. And it's hard. I've said this over and over again, and it's difficult to make people understand. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be all in. It's hard to work a full-time job and then be an entrepreneur. All of your stuff has to be around entrepreneurship. So then you know exactly what you're doing, how you're doing, the sacrifices that you have to make. Sarita talked about paying her employees and not having any money to pay herself in the very beginning, what it is like, how she's treated sometimes by the people that she hires. And it can be difficult. And there are times she wants to give up. The gentleman who owns Ubuntu, he said, look, If you're going to do this, you have to have a purpose. This is your, if it's your purpose, what is your life's purpose? If you can find that. He was a systems engineer for years, but always loved photography and art. And he took his 6-figure salary, moved back to the house in Germantown where his mother raised him, and has been living there, saving all that money so he didn't have to go to a bank to borrow anything, and put it into the gallery that he opened. And I remember having a conversation there, again, moderating another conversation there, maybe about a year and a half ago. And when I walked in, the first thing that lit my eyes were just about all the places that I had traveled across the country. He had been traveling across the country and around the world. Japan, he seems to love Japan, and the beautiful photography. And he also captured pictures of what was going on in the streets in 2021, 2020 and 2021. And it's such a beautiful space. And he said, and I agree with him, that art galleries are usually in places where Black folks or people who don't have any money can't see. He said he allows anybody in to his gallery. He doesn't care if you haven't bathed or haven't brushed your teeth, or if you're unhoused, or as David would say, homeless. um he creates a space for people to come in and just take a good look and be a part of something bigger and better, bigger than themselves. And he wanted it in the community. So he said, I live in the community, my art gallery's in the community, and it's open for people. Marguerite said, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart, and many don't last. Absolutely true, Marguerite. I saw the shock on their faces when I said I only worked for an employer 1 year of my entire life. I can't do it. And I can't do it. So I prefer to be a contractor, do my work, and get to the space where we need to get to, and then I move out, right? So it's a beautiful thing. But you have to work. Hold on one second. What's trained faces? Hold on. Wait a minute. Monica, I'm talking, and Monica, there's so Monica says, yes, I did. I saw the strained faces, Monica. Some folks speak, some folks don't. People are really dealing with a lot. And so it's whew, my Lord. It's a lot. It's a lot. Oh, Tammy says, we're going to join you one morning. Ruby and I have started working out together. It's great. It is. It is. It takes consistency. Cherry Gregg posted yesterday that she's back to her pre-pandemic weight. And what I loved about what she said was this: it wasn't easy. It took me a year, but I had to be consistent. And she had her husband, working with her to eat clean and constantly work out. And working out doesn't have to be being in the gym lifting obscene amount of weights. It really is just getting up and moving for a certain amount of period every single day. Take a brisk walk, 30 minutes. You can do a 10-minute ride on a Peloton or whatever it is that you all have in your houses. You can, walk up and down your steps. My girl, Roz, said that she did 5,000 steps. No, not 8,000 steps in her house. Just walking up and down to some kind of app that she was doing. So it's a lot. We've been really going through it. Let me see. I don't see David yet. So I suspect David might still be asleep, I asked him why he was up, and he said something just woke him up. Same thing with me. I was going through something similar and just popped up, and there was David. Let me see if I can find him for you guys. And then I have, I'm doing podcast interviews for the next couple of weeks. I'm interviewing a city council member today. A former city council member, today. Oh, Tammy. She says, we've got everyone in the background while we're getting dressed. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone. We love you all. Oh, I love you all. So anyway, I said, after a year of working for an employer, and the woman who was the executive director said to me, I don't know if I can work with you because you have an energy that makes people want to have a conversation with you and ask you questions, and they treat you like you're the executive director. I'll never forget it. And I looked at her and I said, okay, all right. And I went on, she wasn't unkind. She just said what was on her mind. So good morning, Mary Alyssa May. And so since then, and that was way, way, way back then. So I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, really. And I enjoy it. It's not easy. I have to tell you all that, some days they're more month end money, but you have to balance and budget, and you have to literally think through, if you got to pay your people, right? I've got 4 people now working for me. You got to pay your people, make sure that they were okay, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and the other thing about entrepreneurship is you have to save your own money. You have to have your own 401k. You have to figure out a way to save your money and to pay for your health insurance. Now, Randall Pinkett said years and years ago, he said, when you're an entrepreneur, he's an entrepreneur too. He says, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be married to someone who has a full-time job that can cover you with the benefits because the insurance is extremely high. He's absolutely correct. But, we're making it day by day, and we're trying to figure it out. And the thing about entrepreneurship, there's no straight path through it. You just have to, follow the path as it leads, but you have to be dedicated and committed to it. Monica says, I was an entrepreneur for 15 years. It was an amazing life of self-discovery, and I really discovered my strength. However, I had to pivot and went back to the workforce. Child, so hard. And listen, Monica, I'm trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you, not easy. So the news, which I have not really been following because I was trying to give Yep, Tammy says, I saw David on Reels this morning, late last night, educated America on the purpose and layout of the rooms at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. He might be asleep. He sent me a thing. Oh, he's logging in. I don't know when he sleeps. Because I talked to him. What time was I talking to him this morning? I just sent him a text. And he answered. I said, why are you up? He was like, this little. But he sent me a thing this morning too about a mysterious bag thrown from the White House window sparks wild theories amid Trump health rumors. So there has been this conversation that our president has not been seen in public, um, and so folks have been, speculating. I'm not speculating. They'll tell us one way or the other. And then there was a news report that Melania, his wife, went over to where they send the presidents when they're sick. But she was over there purportedly doing something. So I'm not really sure what that something was. Um, Good morning, Lena. Good morning. So if I sound like I'm a little offbeat this morning, it's like every part of my body hurts. Every single inch. The only thing that doesn't hurt right now are the nerve endings in my teeth. We walked 8 miles. And I didn't disclose to them that I went to the gym before I began walking. They looked at me like, wait, what? It was so funny. But I wanted to be around them. I wanted to be in nature. I wanted to talk to folks, without the phones being around. And one of them, Roz, said, this is the space where I can get to talk about the things that matter to me. Roz comes on every morning. She's probably can't move this morning, because you can't trust everybody with everything. And so that was a great space. This summer, as I moved and traveled, and I posted none of it. I just kept it off the social media. So, it's been an interesting time, quite different for us in a little bit, but we're going to be all right. David is logging in, so we'll get a look at that. Let me look at the national and local news. So I'm starting in Philadelphia. SEPTA riders are relieved to know that prices will not go up on Monday as originally planned, at least for now. This following a court order on Friday. I'm glad it's not happening. It's going to save the money in my pocket, said rider Adrice Willis. However, the cuts to bus, subway, and trolley lines that went into effect in August will remain in place. 21.5% fare increase was set to begin yesterday, but is now on pause. Customers can now buy September passes online. SEPTA officials will determine how to refund riders who purchase tickets at a higher price. That would have been a lot of money for fare, said Adrice Willis from Logan. I'm glad it's not happening. I'm going to save money in my pocket. Let me let in David, because why are you even awake?
Good morning.
I had to get up. Why are you up?
Ah, ah, ah. Listen,
David.
and let me tell you, the spirit would not allow me to sleep. So, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday
How was
and
your
happy
labor
September, my
today?
darling. Oh,
Yes,
we're there. I don't even know where you want to start. I was just covering a little bit of the local news about
yes,
SEPTA. I'll see you on September 20th.
yes.
And I was talking to my friend Sarita, who said she wants to attend too. She said, I want to
Yes.
see. what that life is like.
Yeah.
So we're all just we're working it out. They're telling you. Marguerite says, "I so love David's morning smile."
Good morning.
And Beatrice says, "Good morning, good morning, good morning, Nina." So, David, where are we starting today? Because it feels like, oh, Laura says David loves us. You do. You really do.
I do. I do.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
this is one of the most well informed audiences in the broadcasting world. And I think what I enjoy so much about coming and saying good morning to you is that whatever we're going to discuss, you know a little bit about it. And so we can have a rapport and we can talk back and forth about the world. I quite frankly I think SEPT is a wonderful place to start. You know, the city
Mhm.
council comes back on the 11th, and begins its journey through legislation. And while SEPTA does not directly relate to our city governance into issues that we can fix and or impact,
Mhm.
it is peculiar to me that the largest body of workforce that fuels the state of Pennsylvania is the city of Philadelphia and its workers.
Mhm.
And so to sort of cut it off at 40% seems so very odd to me. Also, what seems so very odd to me is that the state hasn't said, we'll run it.
They don't listen. I don't know what's going to happen here, David, but the mayor stepped up and gave more money, but she also has to balance that budget and keep it balanced. So, you know, so far so good. Everybody seems to be getting what they need. The police officers got what they needed. The teachers got what they needed. They averted a strike there, and now they're averting, a rate increase at the very least for the people at SEPTA. SEPTA is saying that it's not taking away the 21% cuts, but that they're not increasing the fares right now, until further notice. Uh, Nina says, "I love David. Good morning, dear. Have an amazing day." I'm just reading to you. And Monica says, "Good morning, David. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you." All right, so let's start with your president, our president.
Mm,
What's happening? What
mm.
what is this rumor mill? Because I tell you, I went completely off the news. I couldn't. I know I report here Monday through Fridays, but I just this weekend I gave myself a break. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening. What are you seeing in the news?
Well, you know, Caucasian people have a particular way of dying. And by that I mean the body has a way of showing when it's ready to rest. Suddenly the hands begin to change colors, and we have that varicose issue, often bruising, lots of sort of bits which the president had covered up. I saw some photos and comparisons of Prince Philip when he was headed
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, the end of Queen Elizabeth, when we saw her at the last few days of her life, and she was standing up there looking as though she had already died, perhaps. And so I think in a very non-ignorant way, the skin um, shows its age and shows its mortality, if you will, often on people who are Caucasian, a little bit more than we can see through the
On
skin,
us.
which is brown. I say that to say that the painting of the skin, the putting on of makeup to cover issues which probably speak to congestive heart failure and to then a failure of the systems like the liver, because of the intravenous medications that are being given for the congestive heart failure, all of those sorts of things, like the need to sit
You're
all the
not
time.
saying that he had congestive heart failure. You're just giving an example,
There
correct?
are people, there are doctors now who are saying they believe that the reason why his hands have been so bruised is because of intravenous medication, which he is receiving probably for his liver. They said that medication, which is receiving probably for his liver, is being given intravenously, probably due to congestive heart failure, right? And they're using what's appearing on his body, the size of his ankles, the way that his medical stuff looks, what's going on with his care process, what little bit we know about his actual health, because what is often put out by the people taking care of the president of the United States is not real. And I have to stress that this is a public person, right? I mean, we're not talking about someone who's in a private, whatever, who we don't want to speculate about what's going on there. We're talking about the so-called leader of the free world. And in that, this is the person who's supposed to negotiate on good faith on behalf of the United States of America, on behalf of every person in this country. It is the right of the people of this country to know what the status of health is of this person,
Mhm.
right? This is an elected official, someone who, if we knew was in grave, grave danger of death, we would call upon to step down.
So,
I'm
so I want you to hear this because this just broke. U.S. President Donald Trump has scheduled a rare unscheduled press conference for today at 2 p.m. from the Oval Office. The announcement sent the media and online commentators into a spiral of intense speculation about its purpose. The White House has not provided any topic for Trump's address, which is unusual given the standard procedure where notice includes the agenda of the address, igniting a firestorm of theories. The mysterious address follows weeks of rampant online rumors regarding the 79-year-old president's health, especially after a diagnosis of chronic venous insufficiency, CVI. In the past week, is Trump dead peaked in Google searches, while on X, formerly known as Twitter, where is Trump trended globally. The rumors were intensified due to Trump's prolonged absence from formal press interactions. However, the 47th president was spotted on August 31st with his grandchildren, as was seen playing golf in Northern Virginia. Despite being photographed golfing this weekend, Trump has still failed to quell the conjecture around his health. The announcement also comes amid a complex backdrop of international affairs, including stalled peace efforts in Ukraine, shifting alliance at the SCO summit, and ongoing trade tensions with India. Cheese and crackers.
So there you have it. And again, the intravenous understanding of what's going on there with the veins. Why are we covering up with makeup? And when you speak to medical experts about why that happens with Caucasian people in the hands, and we see that, and we don't see that often in African Americans, that same type of bruising, because we can't see it
Right.
as apparently.
Yeah.
It's because medicine which needs to be put in through the veins. These are some of the veins which they use, and that causes this bruising in elderly people.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, he is alive. But comments like the one that JD Vance made in his last interview, where he said he's quite ready to step in and take the presidency, right? Those are comments which have fueled this media frenzy. The White House doesn't do a very good job of explaining things. Just on yesterday's afternoon, there was bags being thrown from the window of the Lincoln bedroom sitting room, out onto the south lawn. And these are the questions people are, why is the window open? Number one, why are people throwing bags out of the window? Number two, what's happening at the White House? But this is just really not a well handled president. I would say probably there's a renovation going on, as we know, within the Lincoln bathroom, and that maybe they couldn't put up a chute to put the materials down, so they're throwing it out the window. Whatever it is, an explanation is needed for the public. Here again, an explanation is needed for the public. Do I expect Donald Trump to step down? Absolutely not. I will bowl over and I would be most mortally surprised. This is someone who I believe would rather cuss death out than give up power for anything. So I don't think he would ever put his health before his power. Um, but would it surprise me if we learned more? Let me rephrase. Would it surprise me if he gave us an excuse that would only cause us more doubt to look further into what is
Yeah.
actually wrong
Yeah.
with him? No.
Andrea says, read the president. Have you ever seen the movie Weekend at Bernie's? No.
Mm.
So, Andrea, you got to describe what you're talking about. Jasenia says, good morning, mother and morning listeners. I knew he had congestive heart failure when they reported swelling in his legs. My father had the same medical issue. But you
Yeah.
do all realize, let's just say for the sake of argument, that he doesn't make it through this presidency. You do realize there's a lot of people in place to do what needs to be done to continue what they've been
To
doing,
do
right?
things which are far worse. And by that I mean, I think there are people who are behind the office of the president who are a lot more intelligent and more cunning and have better survival skills and are better able to be manipulative with the American public than the person who's currently in the office of the
Mhm.
president of the United States. So I think that Donald Trump is a yes man. I think if a group of Democrats were to walk into the office and promise him the golden calf and the moon, he would suddenly become a Democrat again. I think that if a group of people told him that the only way for him to win popular favor and be loved forevermore is to bury the MAGA cult and move on to the most left party politics, he would do it. I think there are people behind him who play puppet master who say, this is actually our agenda. And that agenda has been built for a very long time. So while Donald Trump is the symptom of a cold, The cold is what is coming. And I think we have to be mindful that the antidote to a cold is not to just sit and wait for it to finish, because this type of cold can kill us. This requires us boots on the ground to be actionable and as white blood cells, if you will, to go out and fight whatever the invasion is. And this is an invasion of our own making.
Mhm. I remember in the summer of 2024 when there was a conversation about um, Joe Biden
Mm.
and creating the space, the narrative, creating the narrative that he was not fit for office, because the thought was if he won, he wasn't going to make it through the presidency, which then means Kamala Harris, vice president, would step in and become president of the United States. All the things that were happening in the summer of 2024 was not accidental, not by any stretch of the imagination. They knew what they were doing. There was also conversation because I was at the Democratic National Convention and was talking to people who works at that level of security detail, and said they also knew that our current president um, was not, would probably not. But they also knew that if he didn't, they were going to have other people step up in place. So we believe while he and Joe Biden were about the same age, while they were having similar issues, it was just easier for them to push the narrative, and so many people bought into it. Bless you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Mercy.
Yes. Um, and the thing about life and death is you can't reverse death, right? So it is what it is. Andrea says these guys pretend, this is the movie, these guys pretend their recently dead boss is alive, literally dragging him around like a puppet to stay in his mansion for a fun weekend. It's utterly ridiculous, and all I can think about, oh my god. So here
I
we go.
I would say to you that the office of the president is always run by someone else, by a group of someone else, usually a
Else's.
cabinet, usually members of any
Mhm,
other. So while we see the
mhm,
puppet who comes outside and says X, Y, and Z, the
mhm,
hope of the puppet is that they hire really brilliant, smart, wonderful puppet masters
mhm.
to help guide them to the office of the presidency. I mean, how scary would it be if there was all of this concentrated power in one man? It is always a group. This group,
No, but
particularly,
no, they don't even hire the puppet masters. There's a strong belief, and I've been doing a lot of research, that the puppet masters are the 10, 12 richest people in the world.
it used to be that the government was so well stacked that the puppet masters were sort of enshrined in law and inertia so that the new president could influence the puppet masters by choosing people who would be influential with all these qualifications. That the Supreme Court would do its job, which is to say we're not going to go rogue or go crazy or this or any other. That the process of the separation of church and state, the separation of the houses of the executive branch versus the judicial versus the legislative, these things would work enshrined in law, so that yes, a billionaire could come forth and certainly make impact on the office of the president, but that there would be some people who'd say, yeah, that's a step too far. And we saw some of those guards in the first Trump administration, right? We saw the government work. That is to say that when the president had influential people who said, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, there were people in place who had been enshrined in the government for careers
Put
who
stop
said,
gaps on, yes, right,
yeah,
right,
not
right,
do it.
right. Hmm.
And so we won't publicly come out and say we told you no, but if you try me, we'll pull the button and you won't be president anymore. So we saw a lot of this stopping of things happening, people leaking things, lots of stories coming out, people
Hmm.
putting their career on the line for their country. This is something that we've always asked people to do, right? Sacrifice yourself for country. This time he came in and fired everyone who was in the way. And then he hired people with no education. Right now, the person who is in charge, I want you to hear me, the person who is in charge of making sure that domestic terrorism is in check is a 22-year-old who has no experience, who has barely finished school from anywhere, whose highest achievement was existing in the model UN in his high school. This is who's in charge, right? Because it's not about who's in charge, it's about what are they incapable of doing. And if you're incapable of thinking, you have newscasters who are suddenly taking high positions in government. You have people who are nuts and just happily be rich, who have no experience in healthcare, who run healthcare.
Yes.
People who say things which are antithetical to the systems running. People who are literally going to make mistakes that will kill and affect you and I. But that doesn't matter because they are, yes, people loyal only to the office of the President of the United States and not loyal to the American public. And therefore, there is no one as a stopgap to say no. And the Supreme Court, just before Trump ever came into office, gave up all of its power by making everything an official act, which was perfectly fine. So we have a king.
So hold on. Laura says the readers are saying that he will not be around much longer. Joanne says if the scenario could get worse, the succession of power is scary. J.D. Vance, Speaker Mike Johnson, 91-year-old Chuck Grassley, then Marco Rubio. Doesn't get better.
Doesn't
So the
get
systems
better.
are already in place. Yeah.
Doesn't get
Oh.
better. Um, it doesn't get better.
Yeah,
I
and then it
think,
says, Professor David is right, and don't sleep on Elon Musk either.
and well, Elon Musk is having a war with Trump right now. Donald Trump has recently declared that he feels that Elon Musk should be deported. So we have this weird tug of war and crazy fight happening in public yet again. Again, remember that there can only be one person in charge in fascism. And we are in a period of fascism, whether you like to acknowledge it or not. We have met all of the marks to be a fascist place. And what fascism requires is for one person to be in power. If you challenge that power, you are moved away, moved out, you're gone. So all of these people who have helped him to get there will next be on the chopping block. We learned previously about Donald Trump that Donald Trump doesn't allow for anyone else to challenge his power. So he will throw his own child under the bus if it allows him to move forward in progressive life.
So crazy.
This is this is a very scary place to exist in when you talk about what it means to be an American according to what the law says. Because the law is out the window, we're not following the law. What the court says out the window, we're not following the courts. There's no one to stop him. The people who would have to arrest him are people who he controls, right? The marshals are under the Constitution, part of the presidential's powers. They follow the order of the President of the United States.
I can still see. I saw that this happened in April of this year. A local Philadelphia judge who looked at me and said, "I know out of everybody else in the city, you get this. We're done. Our Constitution is ripped straight down the middle. We are what we're getting ready to walk into is going to take hundreds of years. Our children's children won't be able to see some of what." And he just looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "But I'm sitting here having a conversation with people who are telling me we have 3 levels of government. Like what?"
They're gone. They're
It
gone.
is
We have
insane. Now, here's the other thing. This is why I keep telling us, y'all, get off of social media. Do some research, ask some questions, read beyond what you see in here. So here's the latest thing. Black folks coming on social media and saying, "I believe we should have the military guard in our cities because, I want to be able to walk down my street safely."
you
And
know black folk who say stuff like that. There's a sister who said some ignorant. uh, I had to catch myself. This is daytime
mhm,
television. Some ignorant things for a very
mhm,
long time,
mhm,
who we as a people really upset with, denied the effects of slavery, often this, that, and the other. Candace Owens. Okay. When Candace Owens begins to say things which make sense, you know that you are in danger.
yes. Yes,
So
because
that
she's now suddenly afraid because she's she's seeing behind. It's
she's
insane.
she's now speaking out about behind the veil of the temple, and when you have people like that explaining now suddenly what racism actually looks like, it's frightening that a person like that has woken up. So y'all who think you want the National Guard on the streets,
And instead of seeing the reason for the National Guard, which is to, control us as we're moving back and forth, and that this is happening all across the country, they're saying things like, well, and that, look, crime and violence has been here, right? We but to use that as the excuse, what have they been watching and listening to that makes them now come out and publicly say? And
it's
I
the
think they don't understand the
brainwashing.
difference this is going to be when the National Guard shows up in their particular cities.
It's the brainwashing. It's the belief that you have adapted to understand why it is that the condition is such. So the conditions in areas of Philadelphia that are impoverished, that have been systematically created to be impoverished, is not a miracle or a mystical act. This is something which has been intentional. This is something which has been placed into the bloodline of
Mhm.
America to make sure that the prior slaves never become free. And if you have to enslave people by thought, then you do it that
That's
way.
exactly what's happening now.
And so here we have the slave,
Mhm.
as I like to say, the muggle, opening their mouths to explain to us how much like a slave they actually are. Oh, we need Massa to patrol us because
Yeah.
without him, we would not be able to survive.
Mhm.
And that speaks to a lack of self dignity, a lack of value, a lack of understanding of the intrinsic nature of what is actually happening in the world and what capital you have, what
Mhm.
earnest you must take over your own actions,
Mhm.
what you are responsible for in your own life. You want a safer, cleaner, greener Philadelphia, go out there and make it so.
Mhm.
Right? Pick up the trash when you see it. Don't wait for someone else to come along and do the thing that you yourself can do. Speak to your
Mhm.
own understanding of community, to your own children, to your own
Mhm.
education, and do something. Don't just stand and wait to be handed the piece of fruit and learn
Mhm.
how to pick it off the tree. Right? That's the difference in what we're looking at. But we have a group of people who are so disenfranchised that they believe that the answer to their oppression is their oppressor. And that is when we stand in a collapse, because then those people are not willing to fight for their own survival, which means we have another group of people who will not be there on the battlefield
Mhm.
when that day comes. And we are at a place of battlefield.
Yeah. And then there's the group that allows themselves to be controlled to spread the narrative by people who are paying them. That looks just like us. That's been going on for a while though.
I think of the twins, right? Who died. What were their names? They looked, he went found the most interesting looking people to represent all Black America, and these two women that he found somewhere randomly, who then suddenly became Trump lovers because he paid
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
This story isn't new, and so what's hard for me, and I think what's hard for you and for many of our listeners, is that this story is not new. This is a story which is a repeat of history. If we want to understand how the story ends, we just need to look at 1935 and 1940 in Germany.
Okay. So I'm and 1935 and 1940 right here in these United States, right? The late 1800s, early 1900s, where Black folks literally had, when we talk about the Great Migration, literally had to run from their lives from the southern states where they were literally being conscripted back into slavery and being paid 8 cents a day, right? Which amounts to 100 and something dollars a year, something ridiculous that they were making, and they decided silently and quietly to just move, start, boarding trains, getting into different towns, and moving to Detroit and other places. I have read now. I'm in my fourth time reading Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, because it tells the story. And what happens here now in 2025 is that we're sitting ducks because we believe I have gotten the degrees. I am living in my beautiful home. I'm able to travel all around the world freely. I am not going to be going through what those other Black people are going through. We
Sure.
literally believe that ish.
And see, the thing that's different is this. Um, One, we have to remember that the continent of North America, and where we sit in that as the United States of America, is vastly built by slave labor. We like to forget that all of the wealth that this continent has seen is based on the human trafficking of people, right? Had it not been for that, there would be no things such as the United States of America. Many parts of Canada were
Mhm,
influenced by what was happening here. The money that was sent
mhm,
to England then went back to Canada, settled there. So while they themselves did not have the system of slavery that we see here, there was this indigenous understanding. A lot of the
mhm.
money they received came from Great Britain, which received money from the slave trade in the
And
United
it's
States.
all
So
connected, David.
it's all
But
connected.
we're
So when we
not.
look at,
We
there is no way, and I want us to understand this, there is no way to maintain the economic power arm of the world in the way in which we have come to live without human trafficking of individuals as slaves. How we call that changes. Who becomes the individuals that we enslave changes. Whether it's the people who we have put into the prison system falsely or correctly, it becomes
Mhm.
immigrants who come into the country, whether it becomes people who we just find to be undesirable. There will always be, if we have this system of capitalism and growth, a system of slavery in America. That system is the one that's being talked about. What is different about today that was different of yesteryear is that in yesteryear, the actual WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Episcopalian who said, I am powerful and a person of white and you are not, and gifted to other individuals who are the same color but not white, Irish, Russian, we've had this conversation, you all understand what I mean, when they became white but did not receive white privilege, this is really important. Those people who became white but did not get white privilege have never received white privilege. They have now been angered and stopped, and they've gone back to the WASP to say it's our turn. The WASP has allowed the creation, therefore, of a thing like Donald Trump and has tried to then use the same narrative, which is what the Trump mechanism, the MAGA mechanism does, that people who are your problem are these other indigenous, enslaved, marginalized, unwhite people. The problem with that narrative now is that they're saying, we're still not getting anything. So what
Yes.
will happen next is that that group
And
of people,
wait, and then they say, but it's the black people's fault. They're not pointing the finger where the finger should go,
the
right? It's
difference
our
this
fault. It's
time
the
is that,
immigrants. It's the
yeah,
immigrants.
the
It's the
problem is
people of color.
even if it's the black people's fault, what's going to happen next very shortly. So this year they'll push numbers and make everything look brilliant for the midterm, so they can say that they stole the election with fairness. Because they're not going to really have an election, but they're going to make sure that you feel like there was an election. And if they can push the narrative that everything is okay enough to make doubt happen, then they'll say, well, we won, of course. But if the entire country is rage and angry, they're going to say it's really hard to imagine how you could win this. Okay, suddenly Trump will die because people will come in to say he's got to go, and the next person will be up on stage. But in that truth, what will then happen is that the year after that is going to be hell because
Child.
everything that they inflated falsely to make sure the markets looked okay, to make sure the grocery stores were still open, to make sure whatever else has happened by November will suddenly collapse because there's no legs under it. And the emperor's new clothes will go away. And so I
Mhm.
think that what we have to prepare for and what we have to see is that yes, while the rhetoric is still very race charged, very poverty charged, very immigrant charged, those things are going away. And what is going to be left is a disenfranchised, angry person of white who does not have white privilege, who is going to respond to its own elected nest. So, yes, African American people, you are on the chopping block. Yes, people of color, people who are gay, people who are marginalized, people who are immigrants, people who are whatever else, y'all are all on the block of chop, right? The problem is you don't make up enough of the country for it to matter because what's coming actually affects the larger percent who are still going to be affected when they have finished destroying whatever it is they felt that you have built. So the struggle and fight is not ours to fix it now, but it is to say and
Mhm.
add our voice to go to the street, do that work. But remember, this battle now is not actually about you. It is
Mhm.
about the larger system of disenfranchised white people who have never gotten what they were told they were going to get, which was called privilege. And they're
Yeah.
still not going to get it. And they don't understand that because they're still playing checkers on the chessboard.
Yeah. Someone wrote, and I believe it was Laura who said, David, speak to what you believe will happen when JD Vance takes over.
The lack of trust in the office of the President of the United States, what he says, what he does, how he moves, will suddenly evaporate. And suddenly people will feel like they have a very well heeled, intelligent person in the office of the United States who will appear more polished, who will speak more with much more dignity, with a greater breadth of understanding, and who will really move quickly, divisively, intentionally into acts that otherwise a person like Donald Trump would have spoken about, let out of his mouth, led on to, right? Because J.D. Vance doesn't have this need to self-aggrandize. And that's one of the Achilles heels of Donald Trump, is you can always tell what mess is going on because Donald Trump cannot be told that he is less than. He can't be put away. A person like J.D. Vance has better been coiffed, polished into such a position, which means that they're much more dangerous because right now what we have is, as I just said, chess and checkers. We have a master of checkers in the position of the queen on the chessboard with America as the king, who gets to make all these powerful decisions and gets a lot of things wrong, and makes a lot of mistakes, kills the wrong pawn, sends the wrong rook out. JD Vance would be a masterful chess player on a chessboard which means that there is a very little chance of getting around that machine. And he would then stack people who were just as masterful and just as qualified around him to be evil.
David said America will be in trouble. Vance can be controlled.
I will say to you that the people who would control a person like JD Vance want a JD Vance. So it would be true if they didn't like him, they would get rid of him. But they've put him in position. This is a person who was where before the second round of Donald Trump, right? Hand selected and picked, who wrote a book that was as awful as Mike Kumpf, who will be the selected runner up for the next thing because everyone, even in Republican circles, said
Mhm.
this guy, this Trump guy, while he can get the party back, this is someone that we ourselves had to prepare to remove from office just before he left the last time. We were getting ready to sign the documents that would remove the President of the United States from office. So
Mhm.
they knew what they were getting when they came into this. They knew the clown show that was coming. They thought we could survive the car crash they were planning because out of a car crash, we would get a new car and they are looking for their car to be the new car. And Americans, passengers on this vehicle, need to understand that what they're receiving is a new car.
And then let's talk a little bit about what's going on around the world. It feels like a land grab. Russia and the
Mhm.
Ukraine war. I have to give it to Zelensky. I thought he was going to go, whoop, okay. They're still fighting.
Mhm.
What do you believe is the conversation? Because here's the Russia is still launching massive attack on Ukraine. This was 3 days ago. Zelensky rejects proposal for buffer zone to end the Ukraine war. Uh, ooh, see this. BBC wrote this. I follow BBC now. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has rejected proposals for a buffer zone between Ukrainian and Russian forces as part of a peace deal, arguing it does not reflect the realities of modern warfare. Only those who do not understand the technological state of today's war propose a buffer zone, he told reporters on Fridays. His comment followed a report suggesting European leaders were considering a 25-mile buffer zone as part of either a sea. What? In this land and time when we what? Well, you can send missile what? And oh, by the way, they were talking about Russian planes being sighted off of the coast of Alaska, right? Like there's things happening. Are we? I often wonder if, as a country, with all the wonderful military technological advances that we have, if we're even safe.
I think sometimes we live in a world called eyes wide shut. And that is not to say that we don't understand that we're not safe, but it's that we don't care to open our eyes to look and see the yellow bus that stands in front of us, right? We deny it. So planes off the coast of Alaska that belonged to Russia. How interesting, but not because we just saw Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump meet in Alaska. Why would we need to meet in Alaska? Why couldn't we meet in Washington D.C.? What was the need for the president of the United States to bend the knee and go towards Russia instead of having Moscow come here? Right? Like these are the things that are interesting. We look at the war in Ukraine and about this land grab. Quite frankly, Europe is tired of paying for this war. Quite frankly, they understand also they can't give up to Russia. They can't bend. So they're doing everything they can to avoid what will be World War III, although we are already in history will say we were already in World War III and that the actions that started World War III had happened before the demise of America. In a similar way, the land grab happening in Israel
Yes.
and in the Gaza area, most of the world has decided that the de facto problem is Israel, right? And before we got to this place, we discussed how Israel became to be a country. So we have this United Nations in Resolution 141, who decide that the land that belongs to Palestinians is suddenly just going to be given as a state to Israeli people who are mostly European disenfranchised Jews who were not allowed to remain in Europe after World War II, who were put out, who were shipped around the world and finally dumped off in the Middle East because nobody would accept them back, even though the problem with World War II was this anti-Semitism and this destruction of many different communities that almost annihilated them. So we have a disenfranchised, annihilated people who've always been put out of countries, who've now been put out of Europe and stuck here in the Middle East, in the Gaza area, in Palestine, illegally occupying a land. So the United Nations ratifies that that illegally occupied land is suddenly theirs. So the
Right.
switcheroo, the swap of the British for the
Baby.
Israelis.
Now listen to this. This was written by Newsweek 13 hours ago. Israel
Mhm.
responds after leading scholars declare Gaza war a genocide. Israel condemned as disgraceful a formal declaration by the world's top genocide scholars accusing it of committing genocide in Gaza, rejecting the charge as an embarrassment to the legal profession and grounded in misinformation spread by Hamas. The statement came in response to a resolution passed this week by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, IAGS for short, which said Israel's conduct in Gaza over the past 22 months meet the legal definition of genocide under the 1948 United Nations Convention.
That's correct. That is correct. Not only that, here in this country, you now have MAGA conservative Republicans publicly opposing the President of the United States' help for Israel. So you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene calling to stop the support of Israel. You have people. So, I mean, it is such a big, big thing. So, you've got two things on the MAGA side that are really not helping the president. One, this Israel war. He's on the wrong side of it. Two, this Epstein problem. He's on the wrong side of it. They're saying release the tapes. But as we focus on what's happening in Israel, you have this occupation. You have people who are Jewish from around the world saying this is horrific. This should not be allowed. So, when you have the chief rabbis of many different sects of Judaism saying, absolutely not. This is not what it says. The Torah doesn't support this. Zionism does not support it. All these things are just not acceptable. Now you have Europe going, absolutely not. This is not acceptable. We can't continue this. Europe who built it. What I am curious to see is, does the United Nations put up another resolution that says there is no such thing as the state of Israel? Will it dissolve the action that they created? Will they stop the imperialism that they put in place? So this is a making issue of the United Nations of creating a portion of another country into somebody else's home. I'd like to see the United Nations come and dissolve it. I'd like to see the financial support of that country completely ended. There is no reason in any way, shape, or form that a sovereign nation should be ruled by another sovereign nation. What is now happening in the United States is that we have a lot of political influence from a lobbying sector, from all different sorts of sides of the world that are forcing the actions of politics here as a day in order to protect an area that does not belong to the people who claim to live there. And for anyone who is confused about that, Father Abraham had many
And many
sons.
sons, and
Had
many sons
Father
have Father
Abraham.
Abraham.
I am
I
one
am
of
one
them.
of them, and
So are
so are
you.
you.
So let's just go. Came from Syria and moved to Palestine. So please don't tell me that Palestine did not exist, because there was no such thing as Judaism when the country was named Palestine. Jesus Christ was a man who lived in Palestine today. The understanding of the Bible and where we understand what's going on in this world is Palestinian area. So when we look at the geopolitics, when we look at what is legally there, we look at what is lawfully, and when we talk about even what the Jewish faith says, it says, when the Messiah returns, you shall go to him, and there shall be a new Jerusalem. So without Messiah, you cannot have Jerusalem in the understanding of this Zionism. So no matter how you slice it, from a biblical text, from a religious understanding, from a standpoint, from anybody's geopolitical understanding, from a political and or even lawful standing, this is an illegal occupation and a horrific act which has continued for too long. A two-state solution, I don't think would ever work, because you have people whose land has been taken from them who say, we want it back, and we are willing to die, all of us, to defend the land that is ours.
We are here because we stopped caring about each other. It's because we've all become so focused on this is what, if we don't do this, we're going to die over here. If we don't do that, we're going to die over here. And we're so in our little silos, David, that you're seeing the harmful effects of it today, right? The Jewish people are like, and the Jewish people that are speaking up about what's happening in Gaza have been silenced. I've talked to quite a few of them under the condition of
Absolutely.
anonymity. Their
Absolutely.
tears coming through their faces. They're like, oh my God. But I've also
And I
spent
want
time.
to I want to drill in there that, and this is a point that you have made often, I've made often, there is no room for anti-Semitism. There is no room for that. There is a great love for the Jewish people. There's a great love for people of faith. They have no business in somebody else's house. So what we could do is to offer them home here. We could say, please take all of this land and create for yourself in Israel, where we have sanctioned it. But please don't go to somebody else's house and try to destroy it in order to make your house look better.
But where is there around the world where Jewish people could settle?
Well, if it were me, right, if I were the Czar, the first thing I would do is say Europe owes reparations to Jewish people. Europe needs to pay them mightily and give them back, just like in South Africa, their lands, assets, titles, homes, and things where they had been for 8, 900 years, 1100 years living in Europe and doing very well. They deserve to have all of that back. Everyone who is a post Holocaust survivor. So the children of those people should be returning back to Germany, Liechtenstein, Netherlands, all these places where they were removed from and shipped across the world. The land in Gaza belongs back to the Palestinians as their city, it's their home, right? The United States of America and Great Britain, which made this possible, by the way, they are the people who really put pressure on the United Nations to make Resolution 181 happen. 141, 181. Let's look it up to make sure we're correct on that.
Yeah.
Which resolution? I
Hold
think
on.
it's 141, but it could be 181. My mind, sorry, because I run through resolutions in the UN. My brain.
Mm,
The resolution for petition for Palestine, I think is its document name. But that resolution was greatly influenced by the United States and Great Britain, so they owe a reparative price. Now we've been paying that price, if you will, by protecting this land. That's something that we cannot afford to keep doing. What we should be doing is offering refuge to the people who live there in this country and in other countries where they have been removed from because of the anti-Semitism that we as a country had. We put these people out of the country and stuck them in someone else's territory. Unacceptable.
mhm,
So the fixing of the right of wrongs is not to say that the people in Israel should be evaporated and be nowhere. Absolutely not. That is a horrific statement and a horrific thought. It is to say you have no right to occupy someone else's living room and you gotta go. It's eviction day, right?
mhm.
And because we have incorrectly placed you somewhere where you would not belong. I mean, you were European, right? You're an American. You're German. You as a German European American are not supposed to be there. Is it 181 or 140?
I can't. I'm looking. Was it a British white paper?
It is the United Nations resolution. So I think it should be UN resolution 181, and we should see a petition for Palestine plan. I think. See, this is where
Because I
my
saw
law.
it. I saw it when we first talked about it
Yes.
months ago.
Yeah.
Um, hold on, David.
See what
In
your brain is
April
full.
1946, the committee reached a unanimous decision for the immediate admission of 100,000 Jewish refugees from Europe into Palestine, rescission of the white paper instructions of land sale to the Jews, and the country being neither Arab nor Jewish, and the extension of the UN. It doesn't tell me though.
What the resolution number is.
Yeah, 181. You were
Ah,
diggity dang right. It was
yeah,
adopted. It was adopted on November 29th, 1947, recommended the partition of Palestine into independent Arab and Jewish states with a special international regime for Jerusalem. The resolution aimed to address the conflicting national aspirations of Jews and Arabs in the region and called for the establishment of the Palestine Commission to oversee its implementation.
right.
The plan was met with mixed reactions and has had a lasting impact on the Israeli-Palestinian
That's right. It
conflict.
is it is completely illegal, right? But this today, that resolution 181 will be considered a war crime. The reason why it was passable then is because the British had an illegal occupation in Palestine. And by an illegal occupation, they were there just taking over. And the negotiation was that the British would leave immediately if the Palestinians would accept the refugees of Europe, right? So hear that.
And
Europe has
this
people who
resolution
just
came about as a direct result of
That's
Rothschild,
right.
correct?
Yeah, Lord Balthasar de Rothschild
Yeah.
helped to
I remember
figure
reading
out a
all
place to
about it.
put the
Yeah,
jewels. So they
yeah,
created the idea of Zionism. It did not exist before this.
yeah.
They created the idea of Zionism and then sold it to the Jews as a you must return back to this land because if you don't return back to this land, then the Messiah can't come.
So then my
So
question becomes, you and I are reading, we're voracious readers. We're looking at the history. What stops us from in our community going back and looking at our history so that it doesn't repeat itself? That's the thing
well,
I
some of us
admire about the
do.
Jewish people is that they don't forget their history, honey. They
Well,
remind you and they
let us
remind themselves
let's be
of
fair.
why they're
Many
where
Jewish
they
people,
are.
let's be fair. Many Jewish people are fighting Israeli army, believing that Zionism exists, when the Torah itself says it does not. It is very emphatic about what it says that there cannot be a Jerusalem if there is no Messiah. So you have to complete the messianic prophecy first. The problem that we have is that you have groups of people who've been sold a story who now send their children to a place to fight an army for an idea that does not exist in its own religious text, right?
Yeah,
The
but
same way we have a lot of African
here's what
Americans.
I'm saying to you.
Mm.
Rightly or wrongly, let me be clear. These folks have been in gas chambers. They've gone through Auschwitz, and it wasn't just the Jewish people. It was a whole lot of folk who they deemed, unsuitable for living. So you could be gay, you could be sick, you could be, but the Jewish people made up the larger percentage.
That's right.
If I come through this like we came through slavery, rightly or wrongly, there's got to be some part of me that's like, I can't. How am I? Where there is no place. We have somewhere to go on Earth. We have Africa. We have other parts of the world where we came from as Black people.
We had in Jerusalem. My family ruled it for a long period. It was called Liberia.
Yeah.
And we were shipped in large quotients to Liberia to resettle it. And my family, Padmore Thomas Perry, these people ruled over Liberia and then they were murdered because they did it in a way that made it much more monarchy-like. They didn't understand the natives in the country. They didn't understand politics with the greater P. And those people shot them and put them out. And those Africans who were there, some of them stayed, some of them did not. This understanding of Jerusalem for Black people was granted by President Monroe. We have to remember that when Black people left slavery, they did exactly what the Jewish people did who left the Holocaust. They became more resilient, more brilliant, more powerful, more economically prosperous by building their things. And then it was other people who came to burn it
Turn it
down.
down.
Burn it down. They took over government office. A lot of people were running in government office. A lot of people who were
In the
seated
late
in cabinets.
1800s,
There you
1896, and the
go. They
folks
were
said,
there. They were
yeah,
removed
and folks
systematically.
said, we are not having this. You just came out of slavery. You're
So let
building
us
wealth.
understand it's the same. It's the same. The Jewish people just happened to have this happen to them in the 1940s and 30s. We had this happen to us in the 18, right? So they're 100 years behind. So
Jesus.
they're doing the same things. And what will happen to them is the same thing that happened to us. When they become too powerful, too mighty, too strong, the womb of white, which has always said we don't really understand you or like you, will come for them. Now, the difference is it was a lot easier to identify the African American in America. Easier to look at you and say you belong to such and such a group. There are a lot of people who are of the faith and the cloth who do not look like it. And so I think that there is a bit of a stronger game that can be played because one can be in offices of power and government and this and the other and not be identified for a long time. And so I think that that what we're seeing is not so dissimilar. But I would not have and do not support the creation of the country of Liberia. I think it was a horrifically awful idea. And imperialists of the United States of America decide to plop people down on the continent of Africa and say, here's where we will dump you. And if you want to go to Black people, get on a boat and go back here because we don't want you here. That is just as horrific as the creation of the state of Israel. I will also remind you that the church in Jerusalem, the very center, the church of the crucifixion, that church has been shut down by Israel. You're not able to enter it anymore. So this understanding that a lot of religious people have, like the Pope, who was at one point being really lenient on Israel, has evaporated because the Christians have been stopped from going to their places and houses of prayer. The Muslims have been
So what
stopped
you're
from going to
describing,
the
though, so what you're describing, and as we are talking about all of this, is an unease and no peace anywhere around the world. That's what you're describing.
we're in World War III.
But I don't know what to say to folk because two things can be true at the same time. We are living our best lives, quote unquote, and all hell is breaking loose, and people are just choosing not to see it. Maybe
The
they see it
eye,
and have plans. I
one
don't
of the
know.
most one of the most beautiful places in the world to ever exist is on a beach looking at the sunrise in the eye of a storm. It is so calm. It is so lovely. It is so colorful and so pleasant,
It's
so
surreal,
warm.
actually. Yes.
And then you are hit by the tornado. So today we exist in the eye of the storm. We know, the weatherman has told us it's coming. Right. The atmosphere has told us it's coming. We stand in this beautiful sunset called the end of autumn, of summer and the beginning of autumn, and we begin to go, oh, here we are. The storm is here. Hello, storm.
It is.
Yeah,
David,
yeah.
thank you so much. It's 7:34. Always a pleasure. Now try and get some sleep. I have to work for the rest of this day. I don't know
Let's,
what you're doing.
the day goes on.
Love you, my brother. Love you so much. We'll talk soon, okay?
I know.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. This episode of Mornings with Mauve is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you.